Welcome to Original Being, where we explore the timeless wisdom of ancient practices and old ways of living, from holistic health and wellness to survival techniques, homesteading, and primitive skills. I'm Jillian Erice, a functional and holistic-minded physician associate and a homesteading mother of 3. I am on a quest to reconnect with the knowledge our ancestors lived by, practical skills, natural healing, and self-sufficiency in a modern world. Each episode, I'll be sharing insights, experiences, and conversations with experts and everyday people who embody this mindset. Together, we'll challenge modern conveniences, embrace hands-on learning, and rediscover the practices that have stood the test of time. Disclaimer, the information shared on this podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. My opinions and those of my guests are solely our own and are not affiliated with any institutions, employers, or certifications. This podcast does not provide medical advice, and any health-related decisions should be made in consultation with your personal healthcare provider. By listening, you acknowledge that you take full responsibility for your own choices and actions. Today on Original Being, we have Emma Markowitz. Emma is an instructor at Owl Eyes Wilderness Survival and the assistant director of Timber Nook Middlesex County. Emma is a lifelong adventurer and naturalist. Growing up in the prairies of Chicago, her boundless energy often led to climbing trees, splashing through mud, and turning the washing machine into a rock tumbler. With over 15 years of experience in outdoor and progressive education, Emma believes that by empowering people to take healthy risks and explore the natural world, she can help them develop the confidence and skills they need to thrive. Her teaching is infused with curiosity, patience, and a generous dose of humor. Hi, Emma.
Hi, Jillian. How are you doing?
Good. So how did you initially get into nature education?
I grew up kind of like a weird kid. I went to school my whole life and I always hated it. And from a very young age, I knew because I hated school so much that I wanted to be a teacher and be kind of a teacher for kids like me. So it was really important for me to go to school for education. I went to school at University of Arizona, and I studied art education, but I also was lucky enough that I studied alternative education. So at that time, I got really into democratic schools, and I worked at a cool school called Kino in Tucson. It's still around. You should check it out. It's a great school, and it's very empowering for kids. And at the time, they didn't have I wanted to be an art teacher, but they didn't have that position open. So instead, I kind of did more like primary school work. So I worked with the younger kids and I got really into just being outside with them. And that kind of grew from there.
That's awesome. And there's so much art that can overlap with nature education for kids, I feel like, because there's so many projects you can do that still like incorporate that. Have you tried to bring that into what you're doing now?
Yeah, I think that it's really, all education is kind of art. Teaching is an art form in general. So I try to still bring in a lot of art. I like open-ended kind of expressive art, which pairs really well with nature. And so it's really fun to find like colors in nature and just like symbolism in nature and just kind of be in the same spaces. So I've always been really drawn to that.
Yeah. And so what are you doing now with children? What's your current career?
Yep. So right now I work for Timber Nook Middlesex County. We are an outdoor program for neurodiverse kids, which is a little different than more your general nature programs. We're a part of Minuteman Art for Human Services, so we really target kids with different abilities, which is really great. I also teach part-time at Owl Eyes Wilderness Survival, which you had Tim on too. Mm-hmm. And even though that they're both nature programs, they're very different nature programs, so it's kind of fun to get both sides of the spectrum.
Yeah, I had never heard of Timber Nook actually. So it's only neurodiverse kids, or is it what?
No, so it's a national organization. It's actually I think there's one in like Scotland. There used to be one in New Zealand. It's very cool. They're all over the world, and they were started by an occupational therapist named Angela Hanscom. She wrote a book called Barefoot in Buckets, which is a great book. And she really realized that as an occupational therapist, her clients were getting more out of outdoor sessions than they were in the clinic. And so slowly she kind of moved everything she was doing outdoors. She still runs her Timber Nook in New Hampshire, which is great because it's really close to us. And so it's fun to go up there and see it. Ours is a little different because we are associated with Minuteman ARC. So even though there are a lot of kids who benefit from outdoor nature play that are neurotypical, we've tend to get a little more like neurospicy kids in our group. So it's pretty diverse. We have a lot of kids with like ADHD, a lot of autistic kids, sensory processing disorder, and we kind of have been known to target that audience now, which is a little different than the other Timber Nooks. So we're kind of have a reputation for like, if your kid has been kicked out of every other camp, like send them to Emma. She'll be good with them. Like she'll love it. So it's kind of fun.
I love that. I had no idea. It's such a great program. And when you were talking about that, something that actually seems so obvious now, but I've never really thought about, is the occupational therapy aspect of nature play and of being outside, because so much of that like sensory input from just whether you are like climbing trees or like touching the earth and, you know, just all of that sensory input is so important for even adults are not getting that enough. But I think, yeah, for kids, that's amazing. And just being able to move your body, which a lot of schools aren't allowing for as much as I think kids need to, right?
Yeah, I think it's like if you think about it, like everything we try to recreate in like playground structures is really already there in nature. So like when they're doing the monkey bars, they're working on their grip strength, they're working on their core strength, and that's the same as climbing a tree. And so it's really funny that we've kind of like nature's playground is everywhere, but we're really, you know, our society is really focused on recreating it. They're just recreating the wheel, but it's not as beneficial.
So what kind of things in Timber Nook do you think are most beneficial for kids? Or are you doing certain activities? Is it more just getting them into these like nature-based play spaces? What kinds of things are you doing there?
So I think the most beneficial thing about Timber Nook is the things we don't do. So Timber Nook is a child-led program versus most nature programs are actually hands-on learning, which is great. And there's definitely a time and space for that. That's why I love working at Owl Eyes too, because Owl Eyes is hands-on experience. So you're learning how to carve spoons, you're learning what fishing looks like, you're identifying plants, and that's all super important to like becoming a well-rounded human. But nowadays in most childhoods, we don't have any free time, and Timber Nook is targeting that free time. So what does it look like when kids have the time and space to do nothing or everything? So Timber Nook is really hands-off. As a teacher, I'm there to facilitate play and make sure everybody's safe, but I'm not there to teach you how to tie a knot. If you are interested in tying a knot, you can come up to me and ask, but like I'm not going to go out there and be like, today we're learning how to tie knots. So the magic is really in the child experience of being like, okay, what does it look like when I have time to figure out if I'm hungry, to figure out if I want to go for a walk by myself, if I want to be alone, if I want to participate in class. Like kids just don't have free time anymore. So I feel like the magic of Timber Nook is really what we don't do.
And is it a curated nature space, or is it more just like a wild space like those trails and it's just natural woods?
So it's definitely curated. We go through, we make sure everything's safe. So like, you know, we make sure that we're not walking into a ground nest of bees. But at the same time, there is definitely a sense of being in a wild space. We're in the woods. It's not very manicured or landscaped, but there are other things there. And then we take hikes if they're interested, or like we might be like, the kids might be really into right now going to the river and just exploring the river. We're looking for frog's eggs and things like that. But that's all sparked by what the kids want to do, instead of me being like, hey, I think as an adult we should go do this today. And kids really need that time to learn the independence and choices and what that looks like when they get to be the leader.
Yeah, so it's really child-led. I like that idea because I think sometimes when I'm always trying to get my kids outside, and there's times where there's resistance and there's times where there's not, but sometimes I think they do need some guidance, like if they're not wanting to go out and sort of like, well, it's boring because they can't think of what they want to do. But if you get them really out there, usually I don't have to. If we go out in the actual woods, they do find the little brook and the river and like they start to explore, and they forget that they didn't want to go out in the first place.
Yeah, they need training. Like we always say that like when we get kids for the first time, they have zero play skills. And like maybe they have play skills in the sense of like they know like if you give them a dollhouse that the dolls go in the bed and things like that. But most kids, we're not teaching them like natural play skills. So it's really hard for kids to go out into nature and come up with an idea, especially like most kids in schools have, I think it's like 30 minutes for recess. So what I see in nature and what it's been tracked in studies is that kids actually need like a full hour to go outside, come up with a plan, figure out what they're going to play with, who they're going to play with, assign roles, because kids still love delegating. That's like their favorite thing. Like, you're going to do this, I'm going to do this, we're going to do this. And by the time they figure that out, it's time to go back inside.
Yeah.
So kids don't really get that like uninterrupted time. So for a lot of kids, when you're like, hey, let's go outside, they're like, I don't want to go outside. Like, what are we going to do? There's nothing like, they aren't there yet. So they kind of need that scaffolding and support to get there. But then once they get there, it's great, right? Like, it's just a struggle initially getting there.
Yeah. And are these mostly homeschooled children, or is this outside of public school too that they would go
So
to
we
this
get
program?
homeschool kids, we get school-age kids, we do 6 weeks of summer camp, and then we get like a adult caregiver and little kid class, so it's 18 months to 4 years, and that's really great because it's kind of more of a parenting class. It's kind of like, hey, you know you want your kid to get outside, but what do you do? Like, how do you get them outside? How do you act outside? A lot of the parents, it's new for them too. So they're exploring, like, what does that look like? Is it okay if I'm also getting dirty? Is it okay if I'm also uncomfortable being outside?
Yeah.
Because they know it's good for their kids. They just don't know how to do it.
Yeah, where did we lose that? Like I would think, you know, I can't assume that most people played outside as kids. I would think that most people did, but not everyone did. I guess if you grew up in certain situations, certain cities, or maybe with parents who weren't fostering that outdoor play either, or you didn't have a safe place to go outside and play. But many people probably did have that as a kid, and then how did that get lost over time? You know, it's interesting to think about. And then even as adults now, how often are we going outside and not having a plan? You know, not having like, we're going outside just to be outside for the enjoyment of it, or to explore in that way, and not because we have to garden or take care of the animals or go on a specific hike or something like that. Like, maybe that's why we're not quite so sure how to direct that in our children as well.
Yeah, I think like even myself, like I'm outside 90% of the day for my work. And then sometimes I come home and I go outside and I'm like, I feel like I haven't been outside all day, because throughout the day I've been doing so many other things that I haven't just been sitting outside enjoying it. And so I think for parents who, and especially now, it's like this high pressure world where they have to think about like, is my child eating okay? Are they doing all the right things? Are they hitting all the milestones? They don't get to enjoy themselves. And I think kids see that and then they internalize it and think like, oh, I shouldn't enjoy myself either, or I should be doing something, or I should be like distracted. And so like we as parents need to set those examples too, that like it's okay just to sit around and enjoy nature. It's okay to like play, you know?
And what if there is major resistance? I mean, that might be a reason a lot of parents say, well, they don't want to, or I tell them to go outside, they don't want to, because they're just trying to like get them out of the house, but the parent's staying in the house oftentimes.
Yeah.
So, like, they're like, go outside. They don't want to do that. Maybe they do. And then like you're saying, with a little bit of time, once they've gotten out there, they kind of figure out something. But if there is resistance, should the parent be going out with the child to like really start to get this going, where they can figure out how to enjoy being out there?
Yeah, I think meet them where they're at. So if you are inside, they're going to think I should be inside. We have to set the examples, and we have to show our kids that it's important to be outside and show them what our values are too. So like if you're outside being there, they're going to want to be with you too. And then I think that slowly as kids get more comfortable, it's better to ease up more and more. So like maybe at first you're out there playing with them, and then maybe next time you're out there reading a book. And I feel like parents have this idea too, especially working parents. They think that like, oh, we should be paying attention to our kids all the time. But really, kids need time not to be paid attention to safely, obviously. Like, you want to know where your kid is, what they're doing. But we grew, like, I'm sure you grew up the same way, where when I went home from school, my parents weren't at home. So, like, we did whatever. Like, we ran around the neighborhood. We went to the playground. We had these, like, intimate worlds that our parents weren't a part of. And nowadays, parents are part of everything. They're in every choice. And really, we're actually hurting our kids because we're not giving them the independence. So I think that parents sometimes feel bad about ignoring their kids. And no, you should not ignore your kid, but safely stepping back and paying attention to them, but also taking time for yourself to be like, hey, right now I'm reading. And like, when I'm done reading, then I'll come play with you again, and spreading out that terms to the point where you're like, okay, now I'm gardening over here and you're in the woods over here. Like, that's okay. But I think scaffolding, meet them where they're at. If your kid is nervous to get outside, you're probably nervous to get outside too. And so maybe you need to feel comfortable first.
That's a great point. And the fear there's a lot of parents with really irrational fears. Now, a fear of your child getting hurt isn't an irrational fear, right? But a fear of your child getting hurt with every possible little thing because you can't take your eyes off them, you can't be, and there's an age difference, right? We're not talking about
totally. Like if your baby's 12 months, like watch them.
But that continuous helicopter parenting where now you're not letting them climb a tree, you're not letting them explore a little bit of the woods. There's a reasonable amount of awareness of where your child is and keeping them safe and being at every single second and not letting them have these nature experiences and these natural experiences because you're so afraid of them getting hurt.
Like, I think we see it so often now where like kids, they can't do anything because their parents are right. They're doing everything for them. Helicopter parenting is like, I think we kind of hit the peak, especially with COVID, where we're all together. Like when I was teaching classes during COVID, a lot of the families were coming and being like, my child has never seen another child before. And like, granted, it was a weird time. Like it was very stressful, but that stress continued after. And so like, the parents weren't worried about like child interactions, but they were worried about being away from their kid because they had been so close to them. And we definitely see it all the time where parents are just like hovering, but really they don't see like that also hurts your kid.
Yep. When I take my two youngest out in the woods, it's really funny because they don't want me there. Like they want me to be like, go away. But if they're going to go kind of deep out in our actual forest, so I'll like stay back as far as I can. Like,
or like I can buy kids walkie-talkies too. Like if I feel like I'm like, okay, you guys are going out there. I'm like, I still want to know what's going on. Like they don't have phones or anything, but walkie-talkies work just as well. And I feel like we've developed a level of trust now too, where I'm like, I trust that you know your boundaries and know how strong you are for things and that you're not going to get yourself in kind of a sticky situation. But that also comes from spending a lot of time with my kids and seeing their abilities and trusting them.
Yep. And that education, I know Tim and I talked on this a little bit, but like how the more you educate them on these things we consider to be dangerous, whether it is something as simple as what to do if you get lost in the woods or how far to go or, knowing your surroundings versus fire starting, knife skills, stuff like that bringing that education in first is keeping them safe. Actually, foraging is a great example. I have taught my kids since they were like toddlers. You never eat anything without asking me, but there are things we can eat and teaching them what they are. And now that they're older, they are so aware of it. Like they would never just put something in their mouth. They don't know what it is, but they'll come up to me and say, oh, this, isn't it, Mom? And I'm like, yep. And then like, you can eat that, like kids that didn't learn that, parents are afraid, well, if I teach them to eat stuff eat random plants, they're just going to eat other random plants. But that's not true because you keep that education like very serious, like that these are edible and these are not. And then they're coming up to you asking, is this edible? They're getting that education that keeps them safe.
Yeah, I think that's like a big thing is trusting your kids and educating them. Like, I think we've kind of fallen away from trusting our kids. So we think that as adults, we know like the right way to do everything, but that really takes away so much of their livelihood. Like it takes away their joy. It takes away their sense of self, and it also like hurts them long-term. So we see all the college kids who can't even like do their laundry. They don't know how to write dishes. They're afraid to talk to everybody, but it's like my kids can do their own laundry. They can eat edible plants and I trust them, but that comes from teaching them early on, right? We teach them little things so then they can learn big things. And I think the biggest fear that we see is exactly like kids using knives. Parents freak out about it all the time, but it's like kids using knives is really not less safe than adults using knives. Kids don't really have the strength to hurt themselves the same way adults hurt themselves. And also we're starting them young, right? So like they're starting by peeling vegetables or cutting soap, and they're doing things like really slow. And then they get better as they get older, just like an adult.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. And what about, and the fire too, like how to be safe around fire. And kids love fire, right?
Yeah. And also like fires are part of our existence. We've had fires for as long as humans have existed, we've almost always had fires. Like we had to create them, but once we did, we've had fires. And so tons of children have lived around fires, especially in New England. We have pellet stoves. We have wood burning stoves, and like we just teach our kids not to touch them because you will get burned. Mm-hmm. And kids learn the same way they learn not to put everything in their mouth. Like they'll get better at it. And we have to trust ourselves that we're making the right choices.
Mm-hmm. Something else I'm curious about is, do you ever see a difference in the behavior of the children when they leave like active nature play? Like, how do they come into that situation, and then how do they leave?
Yeah, so it's really interesting because nature is very regulating. And so a lot of times we'll get kids really dysregulated who come in and then leave more regulated. Or we're seeing them only in nature, so we think that they're more regulated than they are. So I teach at Timber Nook, and we're running classes at a preschool currently where we go into the preschool and teach classes in their woods, which has been really interesting because they're kids who their parents did not choose this for them. They like are excited about it, but they're not seeking Timber Nook out. It's part of the program. So we're getting kids that we don't normally get. So you're more like conventional families. And I would say that a lot of Timber Nook families and a lot of Owl Eyes families are a little unconventional. You know, they're seeking it out. Yeah. And so I went in the other day, and I've been seeing these kids for probably the same kids for almost a year and a half now. So I know them pretty well. And usually we go in and we'll do like a little bit of a circle time. So we'll do like some song or story inside, and then we lead them outside to the woods. So one day I go in and I'm just sitting there waiting for everyone to be ready. And one kid was just like cuckoo bananas, like falling out of his chair, kicking, screaming, yelling, just acting all like wild. And I was like, what is going on with him today? And they're like, oh, he's like this every day. And I'm like, I've never seen him act that way. And they're like, that's because you saw him outside. So this is a kid who is not successful in a classroom. He has a really hard time sitting still. He's like your fidget kid. He's the kid who's like yelling different things during circle time. He's definitely a kid who gets in trouble a lot. But I've never seen him like that because when he's outside, he feels super regulated. He has great ideas. He usually has a really good plan for things. So he's a kid who's super successful outdoors, but not so indoors. And I think those are the kids that have a place in my heart because I was that kid too, where I was super sassy to all my teachers. I could not sit still. I ripped up every sheet of paper, like just to fidget because I need to fidget all the time. And then the second I get outside, like I'm fine. Yeah. So I think there is a big correlation between that.
I've also been seeing a lot online about ADHD is having a moment, right? On social media. But I think it's great because a lot of people, especially adults who didn't even realize, including myself, that have ADHD and never knew it because there's so many different facets to it. It's not all just hyperactivity. There's a lot of different things that go into it as well. But I was seeing things about foragers and people who like really certain outdoor activities or are really skilled at certain outdoor things like that, are more likely to have ADHD and more likely to love these things. And I'm really fascinated with that now because for me, if like searching for plants, mushrooms, antlers, sea glass, those are like my favorite things. Like I could do that. Like it drives my husband nuts because if we go to the beach, I'm just looking for sea glass the entire time. But same thing with like in nature too. I'm always looking for wild edibles and I've always been looking for antlers and that is something I could do it like all day. I don't, and it's part of that hyper focus. I think it's something I'm really interested in. I can hyper focus. And so now that goes into our modern life as these kind of micro obsessions and stuff and searching for certain things. But what if that was just a gift in the old days, you know, like what if that was these are old skills of our bodies that that was our job. Like maybe I was the forager or I would have been, you know, in an ancient culture.
Well, I think also when ADHD and ADD came out when I was a kid, I pictured it as like really loud, hyper boys usually, right? Who couldn't sit still. And in the 90s, they just medicated everyone, like medicate them, medicate. So now all the research, we've kind of moved away from medication, right? Great. And now a lot of the research is saying like, it's not so much just like an attention issue because the attention isn't the issue. Like if you meet anyone who has like ADD or ADHD, they can hyper focus. So it's really not this like attention, like this. It's really like a sensory processing issue. And it's like how our body is taking in information. And I think the longer we study ADHD and ADD that like we'll be able to see that it's actually a benefit in a lot of ways. And I do agree that it could be something else, right? Like there's all different things, but I think the more information we're learning, and also how do we like use our like ADHD or like these different diagnoses to actually help us and improve our lives instead of looking at it as like a shame kind of lens. And I think that's where we're hopefully heading to as a society, or these are great things that kids have. And how do we like enhance their lives with it?
Yeah, like maybe it's a gift, you know, like how do we use it to our benefit instead of the fact that we're expecting children to sit in a fluorescent lit classroom at a desk looking at paper most of the day, when that's a kid that really could have still learned skills and been thriving had they had more movement, more outside time, you know, more sunlight, etc. Never mind
like
diet, which is a whole
that's what you need. Like, I mean, I always say like our program at Timber Nook works because it's neurodiverse, because we have different kinds of kids in it. Like if we just had neurotypical kids who all thought the same, our play would look very different and it probably wouldn't be as fun, honestly. So it's like, it's this great benefit that they're bringing us. And I feel like we just have to acknowledge it and see it as that.
Mm-hmm. Do you see a difference in homeschooled kids versus public school kids with this too?
Yeah, homeschool kids are a different beast. I feel like there's like a lot of benefits of being homeschooled, I think, and a lot of drawbacks, just like anything. But our homeschool kids at this point have kind of like, they really know themselves and they know how to play in kind of more obscure places. Their play skills are usually better. And they have really good ideas that they've kind of thought about over time, where a lot of our public school kids, they just want to like get the right answer to things. So they're like, okay, there's a slide. I know I should go up it and I should know I should go down it, but that's it, right? Where our homeschool kids might take the slide off of whatever we put it in and use it as a table, or they might use it as a ramp, or they have just different ideas of how they use it. Where a lot of the public school kids, they've been taught like there's only two ways to do anything. And after that, like you're doing it wrong. So we kind of have to like change their brain to be like, no, every way is right. Like whatever you do with it, as long as you're not hurting anybody or hurting yourself, is fine.
Yeah. You and I have talked a little bit about this in the past because my kids have been public schooled up until now. And I actually might homeschool my youngest starting next year, which is a big change. But we've talked about how like, especially in the communities that you and I interact with, sometimes you almost feel shamed for public schooling.
Yeah, my kids are public school too, so.
Yeah, and it's not like, it is a privilege to homeschool. It is not for everyone either, because they don't want to, or the parents don't feel like that's something that they would enjoy doing or want to do, and that's fine too. Or because the parents have to work full time and just that's not really a possibility for them. So I really dislike that kind of attitude of like, homeschooling so much better, public school is evil and horrible, and like no one should do it. I definitely don't agree with that. But I am seeing with my middle son that I think he's going to benefit more from homeschooling than public school, because I think he is that kid, you know, the kid that kind of we're talking about, where he wants to be outside. He's interested in hunting and fishing, and he loves like helping me tan hides now, which I'm like super excited about.
It's the best.
And he has a lot more of that inattentiveness and like struggles more to focus on certain stuff. And he's just not interested in things. Yeah. And then he gets bored and he's just bored and he's not focusing. And I think he is smart, but public school is making him feel like he's no longer smart.
And I don't think that's like, and I think I agree that there's definitely this like, it's weird because I think it used to be weird to homeschool your kids. Like you were either religious or something. And now in a lot of our circles, it's weird to send your kid to public school, which is kind of funny. And I wouldn't say that it's I don't think there's anything wrong with public school. I'm adamant we should have public schools, like fund our schools. I think the biggest issue is that there's so much pressure on the public schools to do so much. So like high stakes testing, we never left, no child left behind. We're still very living that. And they're understaffed and they're underfunded. So like, how is a teacher supposed to teach 30 kids in a classroom? If you're homeschooled, you're teaching your kid. There are two of them. It's like a 1-on-2 ratio. Or if you're sending them to like homeschool pod, it's usually like 2 adults for 12 kids. Those ratios are very different. Yeah. And also you're able then to break down education and kind of look at what you're interested in learning. So it's really not that like public schools are terrible. Public schools are great. It's just that they're underfunded and there's too much going on at once. Like the school I worked at, Keno, it was a very small school, but it had a bunch of teachers, and we were really able to give kids one-on-one attention and also be able to kind of lead by example. So they were, it was a democratic school. So the kids came up with their curriculums that they wanted to learn. So every year we'd be like, what do you guys want to learn this year? And yes, they had to hit certain check marks, like, you have to learn algebra or whatever like that. But they might be like, hey, we're really into learning about plants. So we would just do a plant curriculum, because that's how kids naturally learn. If you learn with what the kid wants to learn, they're going to learn better. But if you're sitting there in a box, tired and hungry, and the lights suck, it's going to be a lot harder to learn.
Yeah. Yeah. And then this is kind of unrelated, but I think about how much sugar there is in the breakfast at school and stuff. And I personally am so sensitive to that. If I have a sugary thing, I'm going to just have this huge crash, and I can't pay attention at all. And especially, I don't like the fluorescent lights either. So you have like a sugar crash, fluorescent lights, you're supposed to sit still, and now you're a problem child.
Yeah. And also, like, for my students that I get in my program, I know so much about them. Like, I know their parents, I know their siblings, I know like what they do on the weekends. I know so much about them. And when you're a public school teacher and you have 30 kids, like, you usually only meet their families once. And I think so much about, like, education is your family, too. Like, what does your family systems look like? What do your family values look like? Mm-hmm. How can we incorporate that in? How can we kind of, like, see what you're learning here? And you can't do that in public school. Mm-hmm. So, like, yeah, like, a lot of our kids, like, we sit down and we see, like, what everyone's eating at lunch. And usually it looks about the same versus, like, I've seen school lunches and it's not great.
Yeah. So something else I've been thinking about a lot is, like, video games, television. I think that is making it harder for kids to enjoy nature, because when you're looking at this, like, high stimulation, dopamine spiking stuff that kids are taking in on a really regular basis, it's a lot harder to pull yourself from that and then go outside and just, like, enjoy it.
Yeah, I mean, how are you going to compete with that? Like, I can't. Like, I just can't. Like, I can't compete with YouTube Shorts where they're just, like, getting bombarded by things, and, like, I don't even know what's happening anymore. And then also the crazy thing, too, with screens, and it's the same as adults, is we're all looking at screens, like, here. So I keep thinking, like, what is it doing to our eyesight? Like, we're made for looking long distance and scanning fields and looking and seeing what are our predators and what flowers do we see. And with kids, we're all sitting here like this. What's that doing to our eyesight? Yeah. But the influx of screens is, like, it's hard because it's obviously been happening for a while, and at this point it's kind of this, like, uphill battle where even if you're like, hey, we're not going to do screens, everybody else does. So then you're kind of removing them from this social construct of, like, hey, my friends play this game. Why can't I play this game? Or why can't I do that? And like, there are benefits of screens too. Like, we're in a technological world and we need to kind of use it. We're using a screen right now, right? We're, like, using it to stay relevant. But it's hard to compete with. And I think there just needs to be limits to it.
Right. That's the battle I've found is, I have these moments of wishing I was living this ultra alternative lifestyle, little house on the prairie,
Yeah, me too. It's not happening. But.
No electricity, no screens. And yeah, it's not happening. And it's how do we find this balance to, do some of these really cool primitive and ancestral skills and teach our kids to love nature and appreciate nature and be outside and still let them have that social connection for I would say the majority of society that's not really as into this or living that kind of lifestyle, and find that balance and still, like, and my fear is that, they're just gonna, they already battle me and want the screens all the time and want the video games. And how do I be like, okay, you can have a little bit of this, but, like, this really isn't what life's about. Like, this is all the other stuff I want you to be part of.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is having a community. Like, community is so vital to raising children. It's, like, the one thing we seem like we've forgotten. We're not meant to raise children in these, like, super family units. We're supposed to have large, expanded families. like aunties and uncles who will take your kid when you're tired or who can help you so you can do laundry. Like, we're supposed to be in these communities, but that also means having tons of cousins running around and different people to hang out with. And so I think seeking out communities that have similar values to you, and so they can have friends that make them not the weird kid, you know, like I think, and that's why like I love going to gatherings, because I love all the kids running around in hordes, just like doing weird kid stuff. Like, the best thing is listening to weird kid conversations when they think that adults aren't around, and mostly it's very silly. It's not, you know, what we think, but I think, yeah, having community is so important, and then just good boundaries, but also setting the example. Like, how can we say don't be on screens if we're on our phones all the time? And so often I see like so many adults at the playground on their phones while their kid is playing, and it's like, you could just do something else. Like, you don't have to be on your, like, if you want to be on your phone, great, but also like you could bring a book, you could do a craft. Like, there's so many other things you could do. You could just sit. So I think leading by example is the biggest thing.
Yeah, we don't know how to not be busy anymore.
Yeah.
And I'm certainly guilty of that. You know, I have enough social anxiety that sometimes that phone is just hiding, you know? It's just a way to sort of like, I don't have to make eye contact. I don't have to interact. I don't have to worry about what's happening around me. I can just like pretend I'm looking at my phone, or I am looking at it. But you know, just a way to not interact. I mean, how many people do you see anywhere sitting alone, not looking at their phone?
Yeah, or like ride the train. If you ride any public transportation and you look around, it's very weird to not be on your phone. But also, like, there's something really nice about just not being on your phone and looking around, or just not having access to like all the information in the world. Like, sometimes we don't need to look up everything. Like, I was with a bunch of my friends this weekend, and we were talking about movies, and I couldn't remember a thing, and I kind of didn't, like, I knew I could look at my phone and do it, but it's also kind of fun just to play like, well, he was in this one thing and he did this and all that. And like, that brings me so much joy to have those weird conversations where you're thinking about it instead of just having the answer all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great point. I like that a lot. Let's go back to just trying to...
Yeah, I just want to argue about what I think is right and not have to look it up to be proven wrong, pretty much.
Yeah, it's so true. And we forget how to just, interact with people around us, because maybe you would have more conversations with strangers if we weren't all buried in our phones.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and then maybe we'd find more similarities than differences too. I think phones are very divisive, and I don't mean like, oh, if you use them or not. I just think that phones and screens, we use them to really like hide behind things. If you have to have a real conversation with somebody, you're going to be a lot more sympathetic and empathetic to them than if you are behind a screen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, but you're right. We're teaching our kids by example. So if we can't detach from that and we can't enjoy our time in nature, then how are we supposed to teach them that? So it definitely starts with the parent, which, yeah, I think I'm trying so hard to find this balance. I would like to get away from my phone more. I absolutely am guilty of that too. But I do enjoy nature a lot, and I have been always like trying to get them out. I remember even when we lived in Massachusetts, we were doing like every hike we could possibly find, and they were always complaining.
Oh yeah.
But, like, at the end, they would find cool rocks and I don't know, things to climb and other things. Like, there was always something that they ended up enjoying. And then even now they'll tell these stories of like ones that ended up being way longer than we expected it to be, and like how crazy it was.
Keep going, it's fine.
Yeah. I was very guilty of that. I'm like,
oh, totally, me too.
And like, let's go. And then it's like 3 hours later, they're like,
yes.
Mom.
You're like, we're cold and wet. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. It looks like you should have been more prepared.
Yeah.
When really it's like me, I should have prepared them.
Yes. Yeah. I'm like, oh, it's just a little hike. Not a big deal. But I think they were so good for them. You know, I hope that when they grow up, they're like, oh, let's go on hikes.
Yeah. And like my kids, like I have one kid who's very naturey, and I have one kid who's not very naturey, but we still make him do everything.
Yes.
And like he definitely gives us a hard time, and there's a lot of like complaining. I think what helped also is I have him pack his bag, which he's like a really stuff-oriented kid. So like him packing his bag is really exciting. I definitely recommend checking what they pack, because sometimes they'll literally pack like 4 Nerf guns that they can't actually carry into the woods, or like rocks. Like, why are we bringing rocks into the woods when we're going to end up bringing more out? But I think him packing his bag is like a big thing, and he feels a sense of pride, and then also just so many snacks. Like, if you want your kid to be in the woods, food is a big motivator, like just more snacks than you could ever imagine.
Yep, that's definitely true. And this makes me think about just finding, because I also have, so my oldest son, you know them, but Vincent is not a nature outdoor kid, and then Rocklin is more. And Vincent has still found things that he could enjoy in nature. And then he got really into airsoft, and he would start loving these like crazy battles in the forest, deep in the forest, like hiding and creating forts and different stuff. And that made me so happy. And my mom would be like, oh no, not airsoft. Like that could be dangerous. But they had all their, they had their iPads and all their stuff. But I'm like, Mom, this is taking a kid who would rather be inside.
Yeah. Would you rather him play video games inside or airsoft outside? Airsoft.
Active for hours, I'm totally going to take it. So there's maybe that is the key for some of those kids, is finding what can get them out there and enjoying their time outside.
Yeah, like exactly, like meet them where they're at. Or if they're into certain things and you're like, I feel like people have this like weird limiting factor where they're like, oh, well, that's an indoor thing. It's like, bring it outside. Like if they really like playing dolls, bring the dolls outside and let them bathe them in the water. Let them like make little fairy houses for them. Like let them set their stuff up. Like I think a lot of families have like dirt inside toys and outside toys, and I'd encourage them to like switch them up sometimes. Like bring weird stuff outside and see what they do with it, because they do a lot of cool stuff.
Yeah, Evie loves that. She does that with her dolls all the time, and sometimes she ruins them. But if she's having fun with it, she'll make like little mud baths and then houses and make like fake food and everything. It's great. That's another thing, is parents being afraid of dirt or like getting dirty. Yeah. I don't know how many people need to hear this, but it is good to be dirty.
It's so good for your microbiome. There's so many things. It's very like they call it grounding, like because we feel good when we touch the ground and we like rub our fingers in it. It's great for sensory integration, but also, like it will help your immune system. Like you will stay healthier if you are digging in the dirt. Like they say that gardeners have better immune systems, and it's because they're getting those like all that bacteria on them.
Yep. It's something that we are too clean, and we were never meant to be like sterilizing, cleaning everything. I think that there's a difference between, viruses and super public places and viruses and bacteria there, or bacteria and like you have a cut and it gets infected, and just having dirt is not like gonna cause a problem on intact skin. It has so many beneficial microbes, and kids, I remember watching this movie. I don't know if you remember, this movie came out when I was pregnant with Vincent, so it was a long time ago, but I think it was just called Babies. But it was about like, it followed like 4 specific babies.
Oh yeah, I think I did see that.
In the whole world. And I remember the babies that were in these more rural places, or there was like a baby in Africa. They were just crawling around on the ground all the time, like putting dirt in their mouth, putting things in their mouth. And I'm like, whoa, this is like what babies were supposed to be doing.
Well, if you think about it, like our babies in our house, what do? They crawl around on the floor and they put everything in their mouth. So it's like, it's the same when you do it outside. It's just like, that's probably going to be safer for you, honestly, than if you're crawling around on the floor here and get whatever,
Yeah. And when they go to the beach, like mine always used to like take a handful of sand, and you're like, oh no, but they all did that. And it was probably good for them.
And they learn, like, that's the thing, is like, if you need your kid to learn not to put things in the mouth, the beach is the best spot for it, because that's like one thing that they're going to be like, they don't like it.
Yeah.
Dirt, sometimes they're like, this is kind of good.
Yeah, no, that's so important. So like, don't be afraid of them getting dirty, and they need to play in the mud, and it's good for them.
Yeah, definitely let them get dirty. And also, like, it's okay to get dirty yourself too. I think, like, as adults, we're still too clean. Like, it's okay to go out and be experienced. Like, it feels good to like squish your feet in the mud,
Yeah, and more studies are coming out about earthing, grounding, but also that too, just the whole experience, and how the physiology of the body and changes with physical contact with the earth is becoming a huge thing. And it's amazing to see actual studies come out about this, when we might have always known and felt it.
We know it,
but no one had like scientific proof, I guess, for why it's so good for you. Yeah. And sunshine.
And so, I mean, especially New England, like I think they say that all New Englanders are pretty much vitamin D deprived, and it's just because we're not getting enough sun. But also now, like, our modern world, most adults work inside the whole time. So they're getting less, like, I think it said that most adults go outside like 30 minutes a day or an hour a day, maybe. It's like we're supposed to be outside all the time getting the natural environment. So
yeah, so minimal. Well, that's a good point about winter time. What are your struggles with kids in the winter and getting them outside in the winter? Because I personally also struggle with that because I have Raynaud's. I don't like to be super cold. If they don't want to be super cold, and then they're kind of fighting going outside because of how cold it is, how do you work through that with the children?
Yeah. I teach classes in winter all year. It's definitely a struggle. We have kids who will sign up for like our spring session and our fall session, but won't do winter. But then we also get kids who only sign up for the winter session, which I find really funny, but they like it because there are less kids. Yeah. So those are the kids who are usually like a little more nervous in big crowds. And they always say it's my favorite session because nobody's around. And they just get to be in the snow. So I think the hard thing is, like, most kids like snow. We like snow. I love snow. I think what we really struggle with is when it's just cold.
Yes, it's cold with no
and
snow.
The only way to get around it is really good gear. And teaching them from a young age how to put on their gear so it's not as much of a struggle for you. All during our fall session, we do a lot of finger games, and it's purely for kids to learn how to put gloves on, because that is the most annoying thing. If you're a parent to put gloves on a little kid's hands, no gloves fit, they don't stay on, and the kids hate it because they can't have access to their fingers. So all fall, we're like prepping the kids. We're doing like all the finger games, all the movements, and it's so they can learn how to use their fingers correctly. So like kind of prepping them for it. Also teaching them how to put on their own gear, like, hey, can you go put on your base layers? What are your base layers? What do those look like? And just having the kids be involved, because if they have more autonomy over it, they're going to be better at doing things, and it's going to be less stress for you as a parent. Like, I know everyone's like, oh, it took us, an hour and a half to get out. We were outside for 20 minutes. And it's like, yes, that is really frustrating, but good for you for getting out for those 20 minutes. So just not putting so much pressure on yourself. Like, it's okay to go out and be miserable for 20 minutes, but at least you did it. And maybe next time it will be a little bit better. So I think like not low pressure, teaching them young, and then, good gear is like the only way to really do it. I have Raynaud's. My son has Raynaud's. It's really annoying. My hands just like don't work. So last year I bought, or somebody gave me heated hand warmers, and it's been life-changing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I can't do anything without heated stuff on my hands and toes.
Yeah, like it's life-changing. And I think for a while I thought that made me like weak, that I like had to use hand warmers. And now I'm like, no, because I'm out longer because I have the hand warmers. So, and that's a perfect example of how technology helps us, right? Like because of technology, I'm able to stay out longer. And then also, I think people don't realize that your boots take a really long time to dry. So boot racks are awesome. For a while, I just kept we just rotated all of our boots because we just were out so much that you needed to. And nobody likes cold toes.
Yep, that's a good point. I know there's stuff that gets wet. Even the gloves getting wet. It takes so long for them to dry, and then they're like,
so
my gloves
long.
are wet inside.
I know. And it's so, if you are an outdoor family, you'll see, you can't just have one pair of gloves. You need 5 pair of gloves, and 4 of them don't work ever, so.
Yep. So super good gear. Something I've found really helpful is waders, not for winter, but for other times of year. So
rain
this
gear.
Time of year, actually, as it gets spring and it's wet, and then we have a little brook, but it becomes a little roaring river. They love the waders. It will get them out there, and they maybe even if they're giving me a hard time, but then I say, "Oh, do you want to put your waders on and go?" Then they'll do it because they want to go walk deep into these little marshy areas, and it just seems way more fun. So that I feel like that's a great investment for kids.
Yeah. And rain suits in general. What kid doesn't like playing in the rain? It's so much fun. And then you can feel okay, well, they're staying dry. Even though it's okay for them to get wet, it's nice as a parent to be oh, they're staying dry if they have rain group.
What kinds of things are you helping Tim teach these days?
So we're teaching a lot of adult classes, which isn't as fun as kids classes. But it's been really interesting because I work with kids, teaching adult classes, I always like it to see the other side of it. And at first I thought teaching adult classes was going to be really different than teaching kids classes, but really adults are no different than kids. Yeah. Their carving skills are not as good as you think they'd be. You think oh, I'm teaching adult classes, so it shouldn't take them 3 hours to carve a spoon. But a 3-hour spoon carving class is the same as a 3-hour kid spoon carving class. The kids actually have better grip strength because they're doing monkey bars, they're climbing trees, they're like working out and doing all these things. Where adults, they're just sitting at the computers typing the whole time, so they have no grip strength. Adults also kind of like get discouraged more than kids because they think that they should be better at it than they are too. So kids kind of have this like there's something inside kids that usually they're like, I'm really good at carving. And you're like, great, like awesome. And you'll see the spoon and they're like, isn't this great? And you're like, yes, this is awesome. Where adults are more like, oh, I'm terrible at this. And you have to kind of like therapize all the adults during it. We always say like, okay, this is the part in the spoon carving class, or this is part in the bear carving class where we give everyone a little therapy and like get them through it. So it's been kind of interesting to teach adults and kind of see their side of the coin. But so yeah, I've been teaching a lot of carving class. I have a women's group class coming up with Sarah White, who's on this. We're going to be teaching women's skills, like hard skills, like fire making, shelter. We'll do knife carving, and then she's going to teach the like holistic portion of it, which I think is really great. I actually just took I just learned from a woman for the first time, which was kind of exciting, like for a like ancestral skill. So I pretty much only had male teachers, which has been great, and they're great teachers, but it's very different to learn from a woman. So I took a fire class with Jax Jenga, who's great, and I learned so much in that class that I haven't learned from men, and it's because she's a woman teaching women's skills. And so a lot of her techniques and just like little tiny things are just so different. And a lot of it's just because our bodies are different. So she can be like, oh, if you shift your weight this way, or you're like, women, we just don't have the chest strength that men do. So getting something like a bow drill fire going is very difficult for us. And so things like for me, she made like really long bows. Like the bows I saw, I was like, that is a long bow. But guess what? I got a bow drill fire like that.
Wow,
so that was very exciting. And so it was kind of cool though, because I have been wanting to teach in women's spaces more, but I haven't had women teach me. So it was kind of interesting to like be like, I want to do that because I haven't had that. So to take a women's class was really exciting. And it just made me burn the fire under me to be like, oh yeah, there need to be more spaces for women's classes. And granted, like at Owl Eyes, our classes are like really diverse. We have tons of women in our classes, and Tim is very welcoming, and he makes people feel very safe, I feel like.
Yeah, I agree.
And included in it. But I've also been in spaces where it's been male teachers that like you just don't feel comfortable, and it's not like exactly what they say, but it's just their whole attitude about it. So it's like I feel like there needs to be a space where you're just there, and it's okay to fail too. Like I definitely am competitive with men. I feel like I've been in a lot of male fields where I have to be competitive with them. Like if I want to be a teacher in this field, I have to be really good at the things I teach because there's so many more men, and so I'm going to stick out if I'm not good at it. So I think just having women's spaces like the class me and Sarah are teaching, just so you can fail in it and not feel like there's so much pressure on you. So I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The primitive skills and survival skills is such a male-dominated thing.
It is.
And I felt the same way. Like you get this, just a lot of intimidation or, for me, it's a lot of self-doubt. Like I have some skills. I've learned a lot. I've been like trying to go to these things for a really long time, but I never feel that confidence because it is that space. You're like, oh, I'm going to get judged or I'm not good enough.
Yeah.
Or you see it, you see it on social media when they comment, like you didn't do that right with different stuff.
Yeah.
And then it gets really intimidating. So, yeah, that's great. I'm really excited about you and Sarah doing that.
Yeah, I think it's going to be super fun.
Yep. I know what I want to talk about is, so have you always been carving or did you start carving with Tim? Like what's going on with your little ghost?
No, so I went to art school. So I went to art school. I was always like an art kid. I've always been like, I definitely have something where I have to do things with my hands all the time. It got me in a lot of trouble in school. I was in one class where we were learning about it was in college. I was learning about different learning styles. And the school I went to, there were only A, B, C, D. So like you can get a better grade if you got an 89 versus like an 83. And so for the final class, she was like, oh, for your final test, if you have, you know, a 90, you don't have to take the exam. So I went up to the teacher and I was like, I have an 89.999999%. I was like, when I turn in my homework, I should get a 90. Can I not take the final? And she was like, I would have let you not take the final if you weren't so disruptive in class. And I was like, how was I disruptive? I was like, I'm so sorry, I didn't know. And she's like, you sit there and you rip, she goes, you fidget the whole time and you rip up paper and you like make little things with your hands. And I'm like, this class is about different learning styles. Like, that's my learning style. Is I need to, if I'm learning something, I also need to use my hands. So it means like writing notes, doodling, drawing, ripping paper. And I was so angry about it because I was like, I'm doing the thing you're teaching and you don't see that. So I've always been into carving. I've always been into woodworking. I did a lot of woodworking classes in college. And so, yeah, I've just always done weird things. I did a lot of sculpture work and a lot of installation work when I was younger. And I used a lot of like weird materials for a while. I did a lot of like what it means to be like a woman in society work. So I did sculptures out of like different materials. I made like a full Venus of Willendorf.
Cool.
I made it out of contraceptive pills and like the materials, so like the pill bottles and stuff like that. So yeah, I've always been carving. Recently, I feel like I've just been carving like more consistent objects. So before I used to be like a little bit more esoteric, where I do like weird things over here and weird things over here, and now I carve consistently same things, I guess.
Well, I love that. I've always had this dream of like whittling amazing things, and I don't think I've taken any classes with you or Tim on spoons or bears, because a lot of them are at, down in Massachusetts or at you guys are doing the breweries and stuff. But I really need to, because I want to learn and I want to get better at carving for sure. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, you only get better at doing it. So. And I think that carving for a lot of people is like intimidating, because they're like, well, how do I start? Like, what do I do? But it's once you learn the basics, you can carve anything. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I've tried a lot of my own, but I feel like I just need someone to show me a couple little like tweaks to things, because I feel like it's never good enough. Or it's like you said, I'm like, oh, I'm terrible. This is
I'm sure it's fine. Like the first spoon I carved had a big hole in it. And I carve all the time, but I still take carving classes too. Because like when I go to gatherings, like I love taking spoon carving classes. I probably carve 7 spoons a month, and I still like taking somebody else's spoon carving class because I'm still learning too,
Yeah. Yeah, I know we talked a little bit earlier about gatherings, but I want to go back to that because I agree with you. There's something so different about the gatherings, especially where kids are allowed and kids are welcome, where they do find, like, once they find kind of like some other kids or they get along with, and they sort of take off on their own, and you get that community feel back that we've really lost, because I feel really safe at Moose Ridge in particular, but I feel really safe with all these parents who are looking out for everybody. Like, everyone's looking out for everyone. They're all like, everyone's kids are all running wild, and the kids all do have their own knives and are playing with fire, but the parents are all sort of looking out for everybody together too. And the kids do get back to this place of like, wow, I have some freedom here, and I'm outside playing, and I see them start to come up with those imaginative games that again, and sort of revert back into this like wild kid that we want them to be.
Yeah.
But they don't always get permission to be that kid. And so these gatherings are like a safe place for them to do that. I love that.
Yeah, that's like my favorite part of gatherings. And the more we're a part of it, the happier I am, where I'm like, I love my kids being raised in gathering culture, because it's like, yes, we're looking out for each other, and you learn so much. Like, I feel really safe with other families there, and I feel like if they tell my kid not to do something, they're going to do it in like a respectful way. But also, like, it's probably because my kid needs to be told not to do something, versus if we're at the playground, my kids are always the kids on top of everything, right? They're like on top of the slide, on top of the thing. And that's when I get a lot of parents who say like, don't do that. Where I'm like, but I'm fine with it. So it's like this weird thing where it's like, I'm all for helping parenting in a community, but it's hard when you have different cultural values or family values. And like, like, yeah, if my kid pushes your kid, go ahead and tell them not to do that. Like, please step in. It's great for them to hear it from you, just as it's good to hear it from me. But also, if my kid's just climbing something, like, who cares if they climb something versus being at a gathering? If a parent says something, they're doing it out of, like, a different space, you know? Mm-hmm. But it's also nice just for them to be able to, like, make these friendships that they get to see every year, right? Like, what have you done? Like, what have I done? Like, remember when we did this? And it's funny because I noticed that they play the same games, even though they haven't seen each other in, like, a year. But they pick up on those games because those are, like, their exciting memories. And those are going to stay with them forever.
Yep.
But yeah, I love that. And I feel like I've been to a lot of different gatherings, and some gatherings are more child friendly. And some are not. And the ones that are not make me really sad because I'm like, if you want to raise your kids to be stewards of the land and like protectors of the environment and learn these like and take on these skills and continue these skills, they're called ancestral skills for a reason, then you need to bring them in when they're young and you need to teach them when they're young. So it's like, it's silly to be like gatekeeping about skills and so and away from children be like, oh no, you can't do this, but like we're gonna do this over here. Like those kids, what are they gonna grow up to be then? Like they're gonna grow up to be the opposite. Yeah. So it's like you really need to bring them in and get them excited about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes that's coming from people who don't have kids, or sometimes it's just coming from teachers that are really particular and they just don't want kids interrupting, or they don't want them, near dangerous things.
Yeah.
I absolutely agree, because if we can't show them boundaries like in this situation and say, that maybe this is an adult class, you're welcome to sit in if you are able to, kind of listen and be respectful. And if not, you might have to separate yourself, but having them still be able to be a part of these things. And I've been in classes at Moose Ridge even where I think they were supposed to be adult classes. And then sometimes there was a kid who decided to join, and sometimes it's totally fine.
It's totally fine.
They do an awesome job. I think the bone craft class last year, kids weren't going to be into it, and then they were, and then they did great and they loved it.
Yeah.
And there was no issue with that. So
no.
Excluding them from this stuff is not teaching anything.
Yeah, no, it doesn't teach. And also like kids I think it's really important. I think in today's society, we've kind of like been afraid. I mean, and there are reasons too, but we've kind of been afraid of strangers, right? And so in a community, kids are able to like seek out adults who can give them guidance too, which is kind of nice. Mm-hmm. And be like positive role models in their lives and positive figures and teach them other things. And so gatherings are kind of nice because they can kind of sit at a fire and have a conversation with an adult, which might be weird at a different like place. Like I've had tons of conversations with different kids where I'm just like, that was really a great conversation. and I enjoyed it, and I'm sure they enjoyed it. And like, I might not have had that if I was somewhere else, where we're like, oh no, this is an adult only space.
And you see this level of maturity, I think, with the kids who are interacting with adults on a more regular basis, who have found they want to be part of some of these adult courses, or, they have this, like, they're not scared and they have a level of maturity and they can sit down and have an intelligent conversation with you, it is so funny when you meet those kids and you just aren't expecting it. And then you're like, wow, like that was a really good conversation. That was really cool.
And like, we have kids in our adult classes too. Like me and Tim teach a class, or it's like a challenge. It's called SOS Challenge, and it's a hard challenge. It's a survival challenge. People come of all levels, and we've had kids compete in it, and they've done well in it. Like, and it wasn't with a handicap, and it wasn't with their parents helping. It was like them competing and like rocking it. Yeah. So it's like, they're going to be way better than I am in 10 years. So it's like, keep coming and keep learning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I think this has been a great conversation, because I think everyone who is nervous about getting their kids, it's like, learn to enjoy nature yourself, get yourself out there, and then start opening up these spaces. Don't be afraid of getting dirty. Don't be afraid of bugs.
Yeah, don't be afraid of bugs. And yeah, you're going to get a tick. It will happen.
Yeah, especially if you're in New England, you're going to get ticks on you. But yeah, just fostering this love of nature and this ability to play outside and all the benefits to children it's just endless, the amount of benefits that there are. It's just so important. So I really appreciate all of your insight on that.
Yeah, thank you.
I don't know if you are on social media or if you have anything you want to share, but in closing, is there anywhere people can find you or connect with you?
Yeah. We have Owl Eyes Wilderness Survival. It's Owl Eyes Wilderness for Instagram. The website, you can find all of our classes. You can find me and Sarah's upcoming class. That's a women's class. We also have like cool like brewery classes where we teach you have to use knives and carve cool things, but you don't have to be outside if you're trying to do like outside light. I also teach at Timber Nook Middlesex County. We have 2 locations, one in Drake, Massachusetts, and one in Westford, Massachusetts. And we're registering for camp this year and for next year. But that's it.
Awesome.
Or if you want to buy a ghost, I have a website called Spooks and Spoons.
Ooh, yeah. Buy some cute
ghosts.
little carved ghosts. Emma carves the cutest little ghosts, and everyone should have one. All right, Emma, thank you so much.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed this conversation, please take a moment to leave a review. In that review, I would love to hear what topics you'd like to see covered next and which guests you'd love to hear from in future episodes. You can connect with me on Instagram at Original Being Podcast, and be sure to follow, like, and share the podcast on all platforms to help spread the word. Thanks for listening.